Hi, everyone. Welcome to our talk tonight. And I've got the great pleasure of having a guest speaker who's an esoteric astrologer, Ted Capstick. And we're going to look at the winter solstice in a bit more detail so that we understand what's going on and understand the energies at play. And this year, we've got the conjunction, quite a rare event happening right on the solstice, and that's the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter. So Ted will fill us in on just what that means. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Ted. Oh, hang on. I need to unmute you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. And in case I forget to tell you, Teresa, before we start, because we all care about you very much, and I think you know that. But as the sun goes through Capricorn, starting 21st of December for a month, it will also go right through your 10th house, which is in Capricorn, and your moon. So perhaps if you were going to hibernate at all, from December the 21st to January the 21st might be a good time to do it. You're already feeling some of the effects of that because you're such a sensitive in the nicest way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. Thank you.
So we'll all be watching carefully for you through January. All right, love. Right. Well, thank you again for the invite. And the material tonight, yes, it does cross over with some astrology, but a few years ago now, it's 2016, I was moved in a meditation to actually look into a little bit more carefully some of the solstices from maybe not just an astrological point of view. Anyway, as a result of looking into this, I was able to, because I like to do this then, having done the research, put it together in some kind of essence and make a talk out of it. And this is how a lot of these talks come. So what's he talking about this for now? They're things that I'm moved to do from within to help me to put pieces of the jigsaw together, which is really what we're all trying to do with this wisdom, because it's so unwieldy and sprawling. And so tonight I'm going to give you some nuggets from a talk, which I think I've got about 40 minutes, haven't I, Teresa? Yeah. Yeah, some nuggets from something which I called the Winter Solstice, the Return of the Sun. And I've used some of the Druid material that I've been pointed towards again, which I found very, very interesting, and takes us away from some of the, perhaps, as it can be, theosophy, a bit dry mentally, a bit academic, a little bit very, very higher mind. And I found this not light relief because it's very deep in its own way, but actually very moving. And as such, you've got a couple of sheets there which Teresa sent you, not so much for comment tonight, but one on really the three, the symbol of Druidry called the Anwen, and we see there the principal streams of Druidry, which you can read about, and also one with the seasons. And we want to talk about one season tonight, the Winter Solstice, which is called Alban Arthan. And that's my place to start. But those two other sheets might be useful if you feel you want to perhaps look into some of this, and some of you may have done this in any case, some of the Druidic wisdom. The Winter Solstice ceremony, winter in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, of the Druid tradition is known as Alban Arthan, and that is right at the top of the circle on one of your sheets there. Poetically translated as the light of Arthur. Here, Arthur is equated with the sun god who dies and is reborn as the Celtic son of light, or the Mabon, at the winter solstice. And I think there has been, throughout the whole of history, going well back before Christianity and the Christian story, which we're just going to touch on very, very briefly, there has been the idea with these myths and legends. They're not fiction. they're actually, as Gary Kitchell would tell us all, they're actually archetypal energies are being brought down into our consciousness through these myths. And a very similar story to the Nativity is seen in one of the temples of Luxor with Isis and Osiris. So there is something about the rebirth of light, as it were, which I'm going to link tonight psychologically to mean redemption. And if this title had a talk, it will be redemption, which does a subtitle. It would actually link very well with the seed thought for the Capricorn full moon, which of course we'll be celebrating with Teresa. So this idea of the Mabon, it is Arthur who will be reborn, awakening from his slumbers in a secret cave in the Welsh mountains. And he, of course, returns to be the saviour of the British Isles. And saviour and redemption clearly are linked. The name of this ceremony epitomizes the essential theme of the rite. During the ceremony, which we won't go into tonight, but I want to mention the word ceremony because out of that comes ceremonial. Mm-hmm. And I know Teresa has been talking to the group as ceremonial order and magic, the seventh ray, the divine seventh ray of spiritualizing of matter, as I always seen it, and the idea of ceremonial and the repetition, setting up energies and vibrations which last. And this idea of ceremonial, during this ceremony, the apparent death of the sun is mourned, and then as the fire is lit at the actual or symbolic time of the solstice, the rebirth of the sun, and therefore, by association, the return of Arthur is celebrated. And I think all that this requires of us, apart from an understanding of the law of cycles, is the fact that, you know, we live within this duality of light and darkness on many, many levels. And we have to accept that as we go through the months of November and early December, we are faced with a lessening of light. But that will reach its nadir, as it does, at the solstice. And of course, the word solstice comes from whichever derivation means standing still. And that's what actually happens. It's very much like a planet going directly. It stands still and then it goes retrograde and goes back to where it came. And this is the idea, of course, of the circle of the seasons. Now, this is an old act indeed, as I say, and I think there is something very mythological about it. The Christian nativity story, in my understanding, is but a recent version of the theme of the sun's rebirth. The birthday of Jesus, of course, is not dated in the Gospels. It was dated by the church much later, who officially fixed it at the time of midwinter. But it is fitting, for Christ is the sun god of the Piscean age, and so his birth should be at the time of the winter solstice. And you know, it was only recently in my researches, and I hope some of you have come across the works of Rudolf Steiner, that absolutely brilliant psychic, who actually said that the wisdom of the Druids came from the Christ principle long, long, long before the birth of Jesus. So this Christ principle has been in existence. I have 60 books by Rudolf Steiner. None of them have ever come across to me as being in any way fanciful. He always has tremendous consistency across the books and the lectures. And therefore, it will give us an insight into this fact of wisdom, which, of course, is one of those rays of Druidism, actually comes back to the second ray of love wisdom. And, of course, as I studied this Druidic wisdom, I indeed found it to be the case. But, of course, it's labelled as pagan, and it came before the age of Pisces. But, of course, these rays, the second and the sixth ray in Pisces particularly, came after the seventh ray, which is very prevalent in Aries and, of course, in Aquarius to come. So we're going to look at the idea now, skipping a little bit, the ceremony, as I say. which you could all look up if you're interested. The Return of the Sun, this section is called. The seed of light is born in the dark womb of midwinter, the time we know as the winter solstice. Solstice means standstill for every year on or around the 21st of December in the northern hemisphere. Of course, it's June the 21st in the southern hemisphere. The sun appears to rise and set in the same place for a few days. It is the time of the longest night. Then, barely noticeable at first, the sun begins its long journey towards the opposite pole, and the cycle of new life can begin once again. And we can all bring that into our spiritual diaries if we like, and time to close off things and start a new, more illuminated phase of our own lives. From the dawn of time, human beings have hailed the return of the sun as an occasion of the highest significance, as being the promise of the continuation of life on earth. And we've often used, particularly in this very disorientating year, the idea of there being light at the end of the tunnel. One ancient temple that still stands as a memorial to the importance of the solstice to the Druids of the New Stone Age is the Hostel of the River Boyne in the County Meath, Ireland, which is the first picture that I picked out of one of my Druid books there for you, known today as Newgrange. It is the largest circular earth chamber in Europe, believed to be over 5,000 years old. It is a mysterious and awe-inspiring Neolithic monument, say those people who visited it. In front of its entrance lies, and we can see it there quite clearly, an enormous pillar of stone, carved all over with spirals. And how very relevant is this for our understanding of reincarnation, that there is no beginning and no end? Well, there's a beginning when we come out of the primordial unmanifest, originally as divine sparks, but after that we are on circles and spirals. And in fact, in Alice Bailey's work, she talks about the spiral as being the motion of the energy of the second ray of love wisdom. So we have these spirals there, and this stone can only, through the stone, the temple can only be entered through a very narrow passageway, which eventually opens up into a womb-shaped round space with chambers off to the sides. Here, every winter solstice since the temple was built, they claim over 5,000 years ago, a miracle, we know what's coming, occurs. The first rays of the newly risen sun shoot down a specially designed passage built above the entrance and impregnate Earth's womb with light. A truly redemptive process where the sun god mates with the goddess of the land to conceive a new beginning through light. And we get this idea of the element of earth and darkness and the element of fire and light. And surely at Newgrange, we can imagine how long ago shamans, druids, and other walkers between the worlds who would have braved the spiral threshold every winter to sit in the pitch dark interior where it was said the dead were also buried, but fasting, chanting, drumming, awaiting this miracle that would occur on the morning of the sun's new birth. In later years, this birth of the sun has been associated with the birth of the Son of Mary, Jesus Christ. But in pre-Christian times, all of Europe, from Scandinavia to Italy, celebrated at this time of the year with feasting, dancing, and merrymaking, and above all, light and fire. The classical Romans held a joyful and often rowdy feast known as the Saturnalia, and by the 2nd century, they were celebrating the birthday of the unconquered sun on December the 25th. A custom that originated with Mithraism, the Persian god of the sun, as I understand it. Further north, The Norse celebration was called Yule, a name which possibly gives us the root word for jolly and those connotations with Christmas, notwithstanding Mr. Johnson's comments. Now, by the 4th century, the Roman Catholic Church pronounced December the 25th, 4th century, we're going back, as the official birthday of Jesus of Nazareth, and that it would henceforth be celebrated as the feast of Christ, Christ's Mass, or Christmas. Now, the actual birthday of Christ has never been certain. But I would say to you, if you're interested, that somebody that did do some work in the arcane school, but didn't finish the course because he was claiming to say certain things about the second coming, actually states, and it's interesting if you meditate on it, see what you get, 15th of March as the date of Christ's birth. But nonetheless, that doesn't take away from what we're saying here. That would have made him a Piscean, by the way, rather than a Capricornian. But he was a scapegoat in any case, so I feel comfortable with both. But I would suggest that Benjamin Krem's book on the second ray of love wisdom, all of them, and on the return of the Christ, are worth a look at if you're interested in maybe looking at another aspect and angle of some of these historical matters. After much debate, the ancient midwinter feast was chosen because people were used to celebrating the birth of a sun god at this time of year. So it does seem very relevant from that point of view. But these celebrations of the sun god had come before the birth of the baby Jesus. But even then, the church fathers had to continually remind believers that they were supposed to be worshipping the birth of Christ and not the sun. Now, with our more expanded minds, we can surely see how these two things can be run together. For although this holiday now had a new name, Christmas, many of the same customs were being carried on as they had been for thousands of years, and for the same reason, to banish the dark and welcome back the light. Up until recent times, people in Britain and Ireland celebrated this festival for almost 2 weeks, with peaks at December 25th, January 1st, and January the 6th, the Epiphany, giving rise to the famous 12 days of Christmas. For many poor people, there was no work to be had at this season anyway, so it was a time when they dressed up as the spirits of gods gone by, wearing animal masks and assorted costumes. They brought in the spirit of mirth through dressing up and acting in traditional plays, and through the villages, and especially into the halls of the rich, who will give them food and drink in return. Our modern custom of carol singing around the neighborhoods, collecting for charity, may well stem from this ancient tradition. Both rich and poor decorated their houses with evergreen boughs, especially holly, whose bright red berries symbolize warmth and light and life. Candles were popular everywhere, bringing welcome light into dark, cold dwellings. These would probably have been blazing torches. A family in Ireland, if they could afford it, might have the great candle of Christmas that is sometimes referred to, that would last for a whole week, burning continuously. Unlike the festivals, which of the warmer months, there were no huge bonfires out of doors. Instead, households gathered around enormous blazing hearth fires, and groups of people went into the forest to fetch home the biggest log or stump that they could find. This was called the Yule log in Scotland, or the festival block in Wales. But it had to be big enough to provide heat and light for the whole 12 days. The log was decorated with long sprays of ivy and other greenery and placed upon a piece of last year's wood, which was used for the kindling of one new, symbolizing the continuity of light and life from the old into the new. Now, during this time, we should try to retain this small light within us, and so contact the spark of the new sun child that will grow into a shining child of light as the year progresses. And this came to me a couple of years ago as how much we do need to nourish the spiritual flame that can sometimes jump up in us, and we acknowledge it, but how much do we keep it going and attempt to put a little bit more air into it to make the oxygen grow it larger? It really is up to us. I've met a lot of people through my chart work who have recognized the spark, but allowed it to stay as a spark, and therefore have maybe foregone the opportunity to grow spiritually very, very rapidly. And so this is another reminder for us of this spark of divinity, which is going to redeem us through light out of the darkness. The idea of progress spiritually through remembering that this is a spark that can be made into a flame. I'd like to move down, if we can, to the Seventh Ray of Ceremonial. Thank you. And just to mention this in passing here, because you've covered this, haven't you, Teresa, reasonably? Yeah. The Seventh Ray was in the ray age preceding Pisces, which was Aries, and is also prevalent in the age of Aquarius. And in the middle, we have the Sixth Ray of Devotion and Idealism, which means that you can have something here, but the idea may not have legs. You can have these truths and the idea of good works have to be brought down into practice. And if we still have poor and oppressed people, it's time in the age of Aquarius, as I understand it, that we start to materialize those actions and start to bring up humanity to a much more understanding, cooperative and sharing race. Ceremonial and order. I'm no expert on these. We have an expert here tonight with us who lives in Leicester, who's joined us, and he will know a lot more and may have some comment to make about ceremonial and order. Magic for me is so important because it is the spiritualizing of matter as I understand it. And therefore, we are required to use our loving energy intelligently and with a will to good, that brings all three major rays, for the benefit of humanity impersonally. Our personal relationships don't really count in this. We've got to be good in them, but we haven't got to stay parochial with them, because we've done that lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And this lifetime surely beckons us, if we're considering this material, to go out there and give our hearts openly to the world as is its need. Service is a satisfying of a need, and we recognize the need and do something about it. And we are all entangled, and from Teresa's meditations, it becomes quite clear that humanity has to understand that impersonal entanglement. We're all entangled as a race, whether we've got a personal connection or not. We are the race that is humanity. And at the end of the second section there, I've taken it further and said the interaction with all kingdoms of nature. Hence a return to appreciation of nature. And that's what I really like about some of this material. It links well with astrology because we have the four elements of earth, water, air, and fire, which can psychologically tell me an awful lot about a person's life and their past lives. And here we have, in this type of tradition that we're talking about, and it is a tradition like the Christian tradition, or the Druidic tradition, the Kabbalic tradition. These are traditions, and in this tradition we are asked to open up our understanding and our hearts towards all the kingdoms of nature, the animal, the flowering plant and vegetable kingdom, and even the mineral kingdom as well. And so in winding this up, if we can just move down to this 10th archetype here, because I can then bring in the last 2 points. The 10th astrological archetype, and this just means connection, the sign of Capricorn, 21st of December, the full moon, at the solstice, I should say. And Saturn, the ruling planet, is also the ruler of the 10th house. And if you have in your chart Capricorn in the 10th house, then this is a very meaningful festival for you. And so the idea is that is the symbolic energy which rules this period of time we call 22nd December, 20th of January. So anybody born within that time has their sun in Capricorn. But at its highest level, and this is really high spirituality here, the keynote of Capricorn is encapsulated in the seed thought, lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back. And I need to give you a little bit more than that. That's the seed thought which we'll use at the full moon. But this is the idea, because we're going to get to a point where we have climbed the mountain of karma, ruled by that archetype, by the way. And when we get to the mountaintop, we face what's coming here below, the mountain of initiation. And we will then be facing the light. And here is the quote: "He who faces the light and stands within its radiance is blinded to the issues of the world of men." So all these problems that are going on the earth, this light will blind them. He can pass on to the lighted way, to the great center of absorption. You know, he went into the light and was not. But he who feels, and this is in the heart, of course, the urge to pass that way, yet loves his brother behind him on the darkened path, revolves on his pedestal away from the light and turns the other way. He faces towards the dark, and then the 7 points of light, which will be the 7 rays, within himself transmit outwardly to the face of those upon the darkened way. They receive that light, and for them now the way is not so dark. Now, for me, that couldn't be more clearly put, that our fight for a greater measure of the light, our fight for illumination, is so that we can turn round when we get up to that mountaintop at the 3rd initiation and say, I'm not for going on further. And this is the role ultimately of a world savior, where the light is brought back to those people in darkness. And of course, it is the work of the masters of the wisdom on the one hand, and the work of the masters of compassion on the other hand. And these are 2 of the 3 lines of Druidry. And we have a path and a master to work to. And it may well be that we'll work on the path of a master of the wisdom, but we might also work with a master of compassion. And if we do, we will feel that urge to swivel around on the pedestal and with our own measure of the light, take it back and reflect it out into the world of those who are still dark and unilluminated. And so that to me is, as much as Pisces is the world savior and redemption, we see it already when we get to the mountaintop of the 3rd initiation. And as my finishing point, this brings me back to really what I started to talk about with personal and impersonal issues. Because if we consider the journey around the horoscope from house 1 to house 12, and house 12 is the end of the process for us as human beings, through the first 9 signs, which is up to Sagittarius, the personality has been working on itself and on personal issues. And goodness knows, we all get plenty of those. And they're accelerated when the soul wants us get rid of these personal issues, which are often karmic. They can be obligations in life, older parents, children, partners who have to be sorted out, or whatever it might be, those kind of issues. They're clearing the way through, and it is climbing this mountain of karma to start off with, but in Capricorn, through climbing the mountain, firstly of karma and then of initiation, the initiate is freed from the personal issues and offers himself or herself for impersonal service in the next sign, which is, of course, Aquarius. And that's a wonderful thing, because we will be liberated then, liberated from personal desire and the solar plexus chakra, and be reorientated around the heart chakra. And we're back to very familiar themes now, particularly as far as Teresa's group is concerned. But isn't it wonderful how we can take the winter solstice and bring it all back round together towards this central point with humanity? So I just wanted to say that really covers that particular sheet, Teresa. I'd like to say something on this conjunction, which you invited me to. If you could get up the chart, that's it there. Now, you are probably all aware that there is going to be a conjunction, isn't it interesting, this year on the 21st of December. I set it for noon, and if you have a look at the green circle point there, you'll see it is almost at noon, because they're both obviously at 0 degrees. That's Saturn, the H, and Jupiter, the flourishy 4. We can see there that they're just 1 minute apart, 60 minutes in a degree. So 1/60th of a degree apart from each other there, which is virtually at the time. So that was just setting it at 12 o'clock. Okay, it's London. It won't make too much difference here. And it is a beautiful conjunction. Before I talk about the aspect, it's even reached the press. I don't think you were able to give this one, were you, here? But this is something out of a tabloid newspaper a couple of Saturdays ago called Light Fantastic. And there's a picture there of the three wise men following the so-called Star of Christmas. Well, when I first met Douglas Baker and he taught me esoteric astrology, he said, never forget, it was by the light of the planet Jupiter that the three wise men were led. And they were the magi, they were astronomers, and they knew it was the light of the planet Jupiter. I get all this from there. But anyway, it's interesting that a tabloid newspaper should actually pick up this and says, and I'll just read a little bit from it, the fabled Star of Bethlehem, followed by the three wise men, will make a rare real-life appearance, shining brighter than it has in 800 years. Now, Jupiter will do most of this work. Jupiter itself, it shines 10 times brighter than Saturn. It's a much bigger planet. It's all gaseous, and it's got many moons to help it as well. Unlike the twinkling stars, Saturn and Jupiter shine their light steadily because of their relative closeness to the Earth. And of course, they are using light within this solar system. The phenomenon will be matched again relatively soon. On March the 15th, 2080. Well, 2080, we're not going to be around to see it, but March the 15th, and I smiled when I saw that day because I had no idea that was the next time it was going to appear. But that, of course, is Benjamin Krem's date for the birth of Christ. I thought that was quite interesting. So this conjunction is going to take place. And really, for me, it emphasizes that this year, more than ever, do we need this light. And having known what's gone on through the world that needs no further comment at the moment, we can see that is the case. And it's right to point out that a conjunction is a beautiful aspect when, in fact, these two planets are involved. But I would just make two notes for you as an astrologer. First of all, Jupiter is highly benign and can make very much light of anything heavy, whereas Saturn, that one of the four lords of karma, and part of the problem while it was in Capricorn, notice here, actually on the 17th of December, which is today, which is auspicious, Saturn moved out of Aquarius, out of Capricorn into Aquarius. And there it's at 27. So in between today and Monday, when we have our winter solstice, it will have moved those 27 minutes that's shown there. But that, in my reckoning, has been the pouring out of the karma that has come through the release of the virus. And I'm saying that whilst it's going to take some time for the virus to play through, there will be no, my understanding is, there'll be no additional input after the 17th of December, which is today. So those two planets, as astronomers, will just be seen as two other planets. But as astrologers, we should note that one is highly benign and one is also the bringer of grief and suffering. Through, in this case, planetary karma, which is planetary because I've drawn an inconjunct there, which takes us down to the red part and said inconjunct there, the Earth in Cancer. And Cancer, the Earth is our planet, and it's also what is needed. So with both of those, Cancer is the necessitating of caring, the Earth is our planet, and we will reap the benefits of this conjunction if we care and look after and respect all aspects of our planet. And this, of course, links again with what we were talking before about the spiritualizing of matter, and matter not just being humanity, but being all the elements and all of the kingdoms that make up our planet. And this gives us an even greater feel for what the one life is. The one life as exemplified in so much tradition, and the Eastern tradition, and taken on board by Theosophy, but the Eastern tradition particularly coming out with the idea of one life. And that one life then, that we look and try and forget ourselves, try and forget anything that's too self-centered in our own thing, and open up to the much wider ownership that we have for this planet. And all of its kingdoms here. So yes, most definitely hope and light there, but also that we're being called upon, and we are being invoked by those higher beings to do our bit. And we have to do our bit through selfless service to those kingdoms by forgetting about ourselves to a large extent. We get joy in the heart when we do this, and we seem able to deal with the vicissitudes of life that can bring us an up and down emotional nature. We can deal much better than that if our center is more here. It may not be totally here, we are human beings after all, but if it's here more, and maybe we should use this season of Christmas and this little spark of light that is coming through on the 21st of December to be grown into something bigger. We should use that as an expansion of our own impersonal spiritual work in the future. So I hope that was relevant to the solstice. And I think we're going into meditation, are we?
Yes. Thank you, Ted. That was wonderful. Perfect. And lots to think about. And I'm sure in the discussion, we will have lots to talk about. But for now, I'm actually going to ask that you settle that aside, because we are in a time, an important time now, where we're actually preparing for the solstice. And part of that preparation is almost a call to spend more time going inward. When I do my meditation on the evening of the solstice, this will be very much the theme, that it is a time of less light in the outer world of the senses. And so we're asked to go into our inner selves to find that light and bring it forth. And that light is the light of understanding, of inspiration, of the light of love, and the light of service. It's all the same light. Okay. So what I invite you to do is to get yourself comfortable and just let your mind just let all of that go. It will sit back into your higher mind and work away, and there'll be all sorts of understanding going on. But just allow that process to go on while we bring our awareness, our point of awareness into this group meditation. So get yourself comfortable. You want your spine reasonably upright without being rigid, feet on the floor ideally. And I just invite you to close your eyes. And we want to connect with each other through our hearts. So I just want you to close your eyes and have the intention that through your heart, you are connecting with all of those in this group today and all of those who are joining us in this meditation at any time. So just go into the heart and have that intention. In the center of all love I stand. And in that center, I, the soul, would outward move. And from that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self pour forth into my heart, throughout my group, and throughout the world. And now as you close your eyes, I want to connect with our earth. So imagine that you are sending a connection down either through your feet or through the base of your spine. And now bring your awareness into this present moment. So be aware of your body sitting on the chair. Be aware of the clothes on your skin. Now take this awareness to your sense of hearing and just allow the sounds of this moment to come in. Just accept them as they are. Now take this awareness to your breath and just gently watch the body as it breathes. Watch the breath come into your body and watch the breath as it leaves. So that we're coming into a beautiful rhythm. The breath is a natural cycle. And you can imagine that as we breathe with the earth. Now allow the breath to go a little deeper. With each cycle opening a channel right down through the very center of your body. Until it's comfortable to breathe slowly and deeply from your belly. Let your awareness rest on the breath as you allow your body to begin to relax. And by keeping a gentle focus on the breath, it will take you into a place of stillness within. This is the place of the birth of the light within you. So continue to just focus on the breath, allowing thoughts to simply pass through your mind, returning to the breath whenever your mind is distracted. And now bring your awareness to the center of your chest. And imagine you are breathing into your heart center. And your heart is filling with light and love, and especially compassion. Tune in to that compassion for your fellow man, for your brothers and sisters on this planet. And as you do so, you imagine the center opening like a flower bud that opens into a full bloom. So filling with light, love, and compassion, we enable the heart to open. And through this open heart, we are able to connect with the highest aspects of ourself. To our divine light. And now visualize white or violet, purple or gold light coming in through the crown of your head, down through the centers, the major energy centers or chakras of your body, the 7 major centers associated with the spine. Bringing in this beautiful energy, bringing them each and all of them into perfect vertical alignment and into play, so the energy flows freely. Now imagine that your heart acts as the chalice or the vessel to receive and distribute this lighted love throughout your physical body, so that every cell is a being of light and receptive to light. And this light penetrates every cell in our body till we are filled with light. And this light is purifying, cleansing, healing, strengthening our physical body, our immune system, calming our emotions, bringing clarity, inspiration, illumination to our mind. Now, as your physical body fills with light, allow it to flow out into the etheric body or the aura energy field that surrounds your physical body, so that you are light on all levels of your being. And now imagine that this light flows out into your home, to all physical beings that share your home, whether they be plants, animals, minerals, human beings. Allow this lighted love to flow into your family and out into the family that is your street, your neighborhood, to your brothers and sisters of your community, touching the hearts and minds of all, whether consciously or unconsciously. Continue now to be a vessel to radiate this lighted love out until it encompasses the whole town or city in which you live. Now know that your light is connecting with the light of all those who join us in this group meditation, whether they are joining us now live or at any time via the recording. And together we allow this light to fill our nation. working in perfect synergy, we allow it to fill this part of the world. To fill the whole southern hemisphere. To continue to radiate out until it fills the southern hemisphere. So our whole planet is filled with lighted love. Imagine that we connect with all groups who are working with the light, all light workers throughout the world, and we all join together. Now imagine that you can see our planet as if from space, and you can see this lighted love surrounding her like an aura, a beautiful etheric field of light. And see it flowing down into our planet, healing her, restoring the balance in nature, so that the air and waters are clean and pure. There is a healthy layer of ozone, and our planet is healed and restored. See the balance in nature restored. See all the animal and the plant life flourishing. And this lighted love flowing into the hearts and minds of all of humankind. Bringing peace, goodwill, and right relations within individuals, between individuals, within families, communities, and nations, between nations, and throughout the whole human family. Lifting our awareness and the collective consciousness of all, so that we can learn to live in peace and in harmony with all. So we can take the role as guardians of our beautiful planet. Visualize these energies unifying and eliminating all divisions within humanity, healing and transforming human consciousness, and establishing right human relations. So to continue to hold a space in your heart and allow this energy to radiate out. And as you do so, I want you to feel that alignment between Jupiter and Saturn. And see in your mind these two great beings as they slowly come together to form a point of light that is a pivotal point of choice for humanity. And for us to be consciously aware of just what this choice is. And hold in your heart the hope and the trust that humanity will make good choice, right choice. And now I'm going to invite you to repeat the Great Invocation together, either silently or aloud. Repeat it with me with conviction, and we'll pause between each stanza just to imagine the words being played out. And this word prayer acting as a link between the inner spiritual realities and humanity, and as a channel through which divine light and love and purpose can flow into human consciousness. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out. And may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And now slowly bring your energy back into your own energy field. And start to come back into an awareness of your body. Taking your time and just opening your eyes when you're ready. Namaste. And now we come to time where I open the meeting up for questions, for discussion, for comments. So what I'll ask, I will give the opportunity, I'll allow you to unmute. So if you've got something to say, just raise your hand. I can see everybody. And right, Philip, you go first.
Yes, thank you, Ted, for your talk. And it's good to see that you did mention Benjamin Creme a few times. And I did look at, he's mentioned about the birth date that Ben said about the birth of Jesus. And also, I did look in one of the books that Ben said that Jesus was born in 24 BC, slightly earlier. Just was in the Transmission Volume 2, so I'm going to pass that on. It's interesting about, obviously, Jesus being a Piscean as well as shepherds watch their flocks by night. I don't think that will be December. And also, I think, is the conjunction a sort of an inauguration of the age of Aquarius? I don't know what Ted could say that, it's obviously Aquarian energy coming in. Is this maybe a gradual build-up of the age of Aquarius?
Yeah.
Synthesis, yeah.
Well, yeah, I will say something about that. But first of all, I want to thank Philip, because it was because of my connection with Philip that it kind of really rekindled my interest in the Benjamin Creme works.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Yeah, and we had several discussions about
Yeah.
rays, Leonardo da Vinci, and all sorts. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, as I look at the conjunction, and I think there is a tendency to think of conjunctions as, are they unions that they're coming together? But the two energies are very different. And I think, to answer your question, I think we've got the period of time now until 2024, as per the Bailey teachings, when the age of Aquarius can fully start. What the Saturn is saying in conjunction is, you're dealing with me, I'm your teacher, and when you've learned your lessons, Earth, you can then move forward to this glorious age of Aquarius. And there's Jupiter representing it. Saturn is representing, to an extent, the past and the past follies of mankind. And the two have now come together this year, which is saying, yes, the process is being brought to a conclusion, but we have to have that concluding process of the karmic implications of what we've done before we can. And in the Aquarian age, in the Piscean age as well, with the religious wars, etc., the way we've used seven ray energies in earlier ages is now coming to culmination. So in one way, yes, it is the beginning, but we've still got this, I think, short period of time, a few years, until we've got when Pluto finally moves out of Capricorn in 2024. We've got, and Saturn will have skipped well on into Aquarius. This is the beginning of the ending, if you see what I mean. So yes, I do, but I think we've just got to hold on a little bit longer to let the waves of this Saturnian effect that we've been seeing this year, and in other places like Middle East crisis, or wherever it might be with the Amazonian rainforest and pollution of the planet. We've got to get those right, at least in principle, before we can move forward and have this sharing society. And the economy will change, as we know it's got to do now. The way that money flows has got to change, I think, before we get into Aquarius. But do I see it as a real bearer of light for the future? Absolutely. But we need to understand that the conjunction is saying we're not purely on our own with Jupiter and Aquarius. We've got the remnants of Saturn to deal with.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Anybody else?
Finian.
Finian? Yeah?
Yeah, he was waving.
I'm here now. First of all, Ted, thank you for a wonderful talk. It's one of the best I've heard for a long time.
Thank you.
I don't know where to start because there's so much in it. But let's start with Druids, because I know Newgrange quite well. My father took me there for the first time when I was very young.
Really? Oh.
And I've been there 3 or 4 times. If ever I'm it's about 25 miles north of Dublin. So if ever I find myself among friends in Dublin, I'll usually catch the coach and go up there.
Is this as impressive as the books say?
It is. And the only snag is they've reconstructed it a bit because it was said to be quartz lined. So they've made the outsides of it as shining white quartz, which is speculative. When I was there, it was a bit of a mess with a tree growing out the top of it. But now it's been tarted up. The main elements are still there. Yeah. The interesting thing is there's a book called Uriel's Machine, which is written by 2 Freemasons. One of them's called Lomas. He goes into the whole ins and outs of Newgrange in quite some depth. The interesting thing is that there's an alignment to the sun at the winter solstice, but you've also got a heliacal rising of Venus at the same time. And the slope of the floor in Newgrange is such that Venus will also shine through the roof box and illuminate the back of the passage about 20 minutes before sunrise.
That's unfortunate.
And what is amazing is the mathematics of these people. because you've got to forget Druids, because it was about 4,000 years old when the first Druids appeared. It's much older. It links in with Bryn Celyn on Anglesey, and also Maze Howe in Scotland.
Yeah.
It was the same people, unquestionably, that built them.
Right.
And about the same period. You've also got similarities with some of the mounds in Malta and the Canary Islands. It was the same civilization of people that some people think of as the Beaker people. But what fascinates me is because this is all older than the Great Pyramid. And what fascinates me is the mathematics of these people, because they had it exactly right. There are actually 3 mounds in the Boyne complex: Noath, Doath, and Newgrange. Newgrange is the biggest. From memory, I think it's Noath, which has 2 entrances. That does the same thing, but at the equinoxes. And Bryn Celyn does the summer solstice. So they had a pretty good system going for working out, as much as anything, the agricultural year, but also a lot of spirituality to do with light and darkness. That's the first thing. The second thing is you gave an absolutely wonderful definition of magic when you were talking about it, Ted, because the Magi, and you see it in the symbolism of Capricorn, it's the evolution onto the earth, the fish crawling out of the water, the tail of the fish, but then the goat who can climb to the very top of the mountain of initiation. And magic really embraces all of that, because it knows about astrology and astronomy, it knows about the earth, and basically it's interested in everything in between. The other thing that I would say is this business about turning back. Very important. You've got 2 principles in magic, which are sometimes called the way of the Magus or master, and the way of the Bodhisattva, to use the Eastern term. The Bodhisattva is the one that turns their back at the top of the mountain, because what they want to do first is to bless the lives of others in compassion. And how important is that? One of the problems with the Western mystery tradition, it's too focused on the adept. Wow, look at me, look what I can do. And there's more to it than that. So yes, you're perfectly right. The other thing I'd say about Saturn and Jupiter, they were the 2 sacred planets of the Jews, which of course comes straight out of the Babylonians, because anything to do with astrology and astronomy in Judaism is Babylonian, although they hold on to it. But what you had was Jupiter was kingship, and Saturn was sacrifice, the 2 great principles. And what you've got with the grand conjunction, which is Jupiter and Saturn coming together, is these 2 great principles coming together, marking eras. Comes together somewhere roughly about once every 20 years, and sometimes in cycles of 3. I posted an interesting video on YouTube on the Theosophy website for Nottingham, from Exeter University, who've done some excellent stuff on the astronomy of great conjunctions. But the interesting thing is that there was a great conjunction in 7 BC. And we know that Jesus was born before the death of Herod, which from Roman records we know to have been 4 BC. And although there's some doubt if the massacre of the innocents actually happened or not, Herod did some dreadful things, but a lot of people think he didn't do that. But the very fact that it says it symbolically in the Gospel is a hint on 7 BC. because it was up to 3 years before 4 BC when Herod died. So you've got a link in there that the Star of Bethlehem could be the grand conjunction of 7 BC quite easily. The other thing about Capricorn, I can't remember, I'd have to look it up, which sign of the zodiac that one actually fell in, because they do fluctuate. But the other thing that amuses me, I was in Bethlehem a few years ago, and we were singing Christmas carols in April, which is a little bit off. Apart from the fact that they said they don't say when Jesus was born in the Bible, but there is a hint in Luke. And it's the bit that you just quoted. There were shepherds abiding in the fields. Because the people who were there, and we actually met some shepherds as well, they make a point of introducing it. They said, we don't do that, you know, not in December. It's too darn cold. We do it in March, April.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
And if you think astrologically, all this business about the Lamb of God is symbolism of Aries.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the Lamb.
So Christ was born somewhere in Pisces, Aries.
Mm-hmm.
And paradoxically, the Mormons have a revelation that say he was born on April the 6th.
Aries.
Yeah, and I don't think they know anything about astrology. They're not that clever. But so I think you can say he was born somewhere around that period. That ties in with the symbolism that we get in the Gospels if you relate it to astrology.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and I do think that what we've got with this grand conjunction coming up now, on top of the Capricorn and all its symbolism that's relevant to us now, what it is, it's a zone marker that things are changing.
Yeah.
I've been reminded in recent days of the thing that Yeats wrote in the poem 1916. All is changed utterly. The terrible beauty is born. He wasn't actually referring to, he was referring to different things when he wrote it. But I get that's been resonating with me all through this year of the virus. That this is a marker point where things are going to be different. That doesn't automatically mean an improvement, but I've got a feeling you might be right that we're over some of the worst. But there's got to be big changes before what's going to come is able to come, which is really getting rid of a whole lot of stuff that needs to be gotten rid of. Yeah. I'm not going to go into detail as to what that is. And paradoxically, it's quite funny because Yeats was quite an antiquarian. And he was the first person to popularize the idea of the Newgrange shadow of light, because he came across it. Of course, the local people knew, but nobody took any notice. But he was the first person to make a note of it in the sort of later 19th century when he was collecting folklore. And then people pricked up their ears.
Fascinating insights, Finn, and you know your comment about Saturn being sacrificed, that seed note I read out, you know, about turning your back on the light, that what is sacrifice if that isn't, you know,
is what's wonderful is the way it all ties in.
Absolutely. And that you found another piece of the jigsaw. But I think you're right about the letting go. It's this Saturn is saying, sacrifice what you have been doing, and you've got to trust that the expansiveness that will result in moving away from self-centeredness will be the way forward. And that's what we've had to learn this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
One other brief thing. We mentioned a little bit about Christianity at the beginning. When you go back to the Celtic Church in the 4th or 5th century, people like Columbanus, as he might have been known, Saint Columba, he was very much interested in the Druidic solar energy. as it related to Christ. He could see no distinction.
Mm.
And that was a very Celtic thing.
Mm.
That's why you've got the Celtic cross, which is the wheel of the year.
Yeah.
That is Druidic.
Yes.
And also Neo-Christian. It all changed with the Synod of Whitby, when some of that stuff was beaten out. And one of the things that happened was, in the transition, the St. Columba was one of the ones who did it. He organized that the colleges of Druids became colleges of priests in the new Christian tradition, in the Celtic form. And it was a very easy transition. There's been some work, some of my friends, the Irish Freemasons, have done some work on this. And it's absolutely fascinating just how they were able to adapt a lot of solar paganism into Christianity quite comfortably.
Yeah.
But then the Roman missionaries came along a bit later, and it culminated in the Synod of Whitby. And a lot of that was sort of driven out.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, again, how it all fits together.
Very much so. And how it's a natural blending of the rays, the pagans and the Celtic Christianity, to me, is a beautiful blend of different types of rays, which perhaps some of the more narrow-minded on the synod just couldn't see or just couldn't handle the expansiveness of that energy, so they whittled it down.
Yeah. And the other thing is that there's no question that all these energies have a course, and they change. And the original pagan energy that had run through Ireland had by this time become debased. There was far too much emphasis on human sacrifice in this type of thing.
Yeah.
And it had to be gotten rid of and replaced with something else. And what they replaced it with was a version of Christianity that was suitable to them.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same thing now, if you like, with the New Age.
Yeah, that's
as
real.
aspects of the Christian thing have run their course with the change of signs.
Yeah.
And it's again a slow but inevitable process.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fascinating insights.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Finny, and thank you, everybody. That's I know for me, the understanding ties in with I suppose I'm more an intuitive heart feeling of this energy, and I love it when my mind and my heart can start to sing together. And that's what this talk tonight has done, because the intuitive's there, now you've filled in and they come together. So I'll take this opportunity just to thank everybody. There's not going to be another talk on a Thursday for a bit, but if you'd like to join me on Monday evening at 7, it's just going to be a meditation session for the solstice. It is a very powerful time for groups to meditate together, and groups all over the world will be meditating together, and you might even find that, like me, I think I've got about 3 going on at the same time because there's so many initiatives, which is very Aquarian, this group consciousness and this rise of the understanding and the desire to work in groups, to come together with like minds and similar intention and work with these energies. So if you can on Monday, honor the day in your own way. It's a very good day to perhaps have a day off from the outer world and to spend time in a reflection and prayer and meditation, but especially to get out and connect with our planet, because remember, our planet is a being, and this event is happening to her on a scale far grander than any one of us, and we're all in it together. So thank you very much, and I would just like to say namaste.